That's good.
Okay.
You need the podium?
And then I'll introduce you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mark Fleming. I'm President and CEO of Conservatives for Clean Energy. We'd like to welcome everyone who has taken time today to join us. We have many friends in the State House, both members and staffers, and those connected to that process who are right down the street in session, but as soon as the session ends, I think we'll see some of them come and join us. But we want to say thank you to everyone that is here. I see Senator Jeff Tart, and Senator Woodard is here as well. Thank you all both for joining us. Thank you. Conservatives for Clean Energy, we were founded in 2014. We're an organization that works to promote clean energy and give a voice to conservatives engaged in this process and to amplify all that conservatives are doing on clean energy. We have two members from our board, Valerie Procopio and Stu Miller, who are here with us. Valerie and Stu in the back, thank y'all both for being here. And the other thing we've seen since we started this in 2014 is the strong presence of our job creators in North Carolina on this issue. And we have representatives here today from New Belgium, from Cree, from SAS, from VF Corporation, and I hope I haven't missed anyone, but I know we have representatives from those four major, three of them with headquarters in North Carolina and one with a major North Carolina presence. So we appreciate all those in the corporate community who are getting involved and engaged on clean energy issues. This is our fourth year of doing this poll luncheon. We have this event, then on Friday, we do the same presentation in Charlotte at the Charlotte City Club. So if any of you in the room know folks in Charlotte that need to hear this message today that Paul and Dee will deliver and go through the results, please let us know, and we will add them to our list Friday at noon in Charlotte. We also do an event every year in November in Greensboro, where we celebrate our clean energy champions. And many of the several of the corporations that I've named, the companies I've named, have been honored at that event, and it's become a big event for us every year. So we are, again, glad that you all are here, and without further ado, I'm going to turn the program over to one half of the team to introduce today's presentation. Dee Stewart, many of you in the room, most of you know Dee. He does an outstanding job for us at Conservatives for Clean Energy, is the brains behind much of what we do. He does a fantastic job. He's consultant to Congressman Patrick McHenry, who's the Chief Deputy Whip in the U.S. House, and has among his clients many members of the State House and State Senate, and also corporate clients throughout the state. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Dee Stewart.
It's great to be among friends. I'd just like to say this is the first time that any of us have held this luncheon in 4 years when we've had such a truncated session. You know, we're doing a General Assembly short session in record time. I think they want to be out basically by the end of the month. And so I think we all need to be sensitive to that and appreciative of that. I know that they're doing the best they can to manage a busy day with session and with committee meetings. They've got a House J committee, I think, at 1, and they've got an Energy Committee meeting, I think, at 2. So I know they're doing the very best they can. And frankly, the people who are really doing the educating, some of the folks in this room, you know, present company included, are doing the educating, but the lawmakers themselves have been out educating other lawmakers. And so I'm so pleased with what we've been able to do in terms of outreach to them, educating them. And I know that even now, a lot of our champions who RSVP'd today are over there fighting the good fight for us to educate other lawmakers. And those who will be able to make it today with this truncated schedule, will be privy to some of the information we're going to present. Those who will not be able to make it from the General Assembly with today's truncated schedule as a part of this truncated session will be privy to the same information per small education sessions on this poll, per perhaps a webinar. Our firm will do whatever we can to make sure that this information, which is so valuable and is so current, get to the people who make the decisions in this state and who can educate other decision makers. So I'm really pleased with who's here. I'm really pleased with the folks who are at the General Assembly, and we would not be here if it were not for the good work of our state lawmakers, and they've got a thankless job. They make almost no money. They're over there busting their butt over the noon hour, and we should be very thankful to them. So I'd like to give a round of applause to all the lawmakers who aren't here for the hard work that they're doing, and we will make sure that they have every opportunity to be privy to this information and that they will be educated, and they've done a fantastic job moving renewables forward, educating the public, educating one another, and educating staff. And it's a real testament to all those lawmakers who are not here, who RSVP'd and who just at this time are busy doing the people's business. And that's really what they should be doing anyway. I would also say this. We had several other folks on the staff who again, work hard. They don't get paid a great deal of money. They're over there working hard as well. And so I would just like to say, on behalf of strategic partners and on behalf of Conservatives for Clean Energy, thank you to the lawmakers, thank you for the staff for working so hard not only on clean energy issues, but all issues. And we know that if they can come over, they'll join us, but they're doing the people's work. We will go out of our way to make sure that they have this information. And so pleased with the work that they're doing. At this time, I'd like to introduce someone who really needs no introduction. He's the top pollster in the state, and frankly, he's the top political consultant in the state. And somehow I lucked into being his business partner. Paul Shumaker has elected almost every Republican member of the Supreme Court that's ever served on the Supreme Court. Paul Shumaker's elected both of our United States senators and is on the top strategic post for many of our members of Congress. He helped elect our first Republican Speaker of the House, Harold Brubaker, and our second Republican Speaker of the House, Tom Tillis. Tom Tillis had to leave. He got a bigger job. He had to go to the U.S. Senate. I credit Paul Shumaker with that. At this time, it's my pleasure to introduce Paul Shumaker, the top strategist, the top pollster, and the top political consultant in North Carolina, to present the 2018 version of the Conservatives for Clean Energy statewide poll. Paul?
Thank you, Dave. I always say if you feel good about yourself, let Dee introduce you. This is our fourth survey. We've done one for the last 3 years prior to this. And you're going to see a lot of time series data in the survey. And also you're going to see some historical trends. And as always, we'll end with a little bit of a political insight and political discussion. I'll be glad to take any questions as we go through the process. I think, Mark, we have about an hour. So presentation will take about 30, 35. I want to skip through table of contents. Methodology, N equals 600. A couple of things to note about this. This is a survey of voters. This is not a survey of registered voters. You're going to find there's more Republicans in this survey than there are unaffiliateds, because we're looking at midterm election cycles, and unaffiliateds vote higher frequency during presidential years than they do during non-presidential years. With that said, one of the things when I get into the data, I would actually, and I told the Conservatives for Clean Energy group in the pre-poll briefing, I'd actually put this as a floor of the numbers. This is not a ceiling for their numbers as it relates to clean energy issues, because the unaffiliated numbers here is underrepresented from a standpoint of voters as a whole in the state of North Carolina. And you'll see how they feel about the issues. Voter intensity, this is if you always vote, almost always, most of the time. We excluded people who said that they never vote, or hardly ever. And one of the things you'll notice here is that liberal intensity at 81, Democrats at 80.2, and then you have an older intensity. Liberal intensity, Republican intensity is 73.6 compared to Democratic. We have all read a lot of news stories if you follow American politics. There's been about a 5-point gap in turnout intensity in special elections and midterm cycles between Democrats and Republicans, and that's sort of reflected here as a whole. One interesting note is on the unaffiliated intensity, actually a little bit higher in this one than it is on the Republican side, which normally you don't see that in midterm. This is not from the polling data. This is my data and Dee's data, and I actually got this going back 20 years, and I like to point this out because I always tell everybody mathematics is a sobering reality of life. And so let's talk about where North Carolina is going. If you look at the top in November 2010, Democrats were at 45.7, Republicans 31.08, and then 22.2 for unaffiliated. Now go to May, and this is as of a couple of weeks ago from State Board of Elections website. Democrats 38.2, Republicans 30, unaffiliated 31.1. I've said this in the past, Democrats should not rest on their laurels. They've actually had a greater decline in voter registration than Republicans have. Republicans have held steady. Unaffiliated on the trend line, I did not get it done today, but I'll calculate and come up with a pretty target number to when unaffiliated become the #1 voting group in the state of North Carolina. And that track is going to be on about a 4-year track. Ideologically, one of the things we ask in a survey, how would you describe yourself politically? Would you say you're a liberal, a moderate, or a conservative? So this is self-described ideology. 10 years ago, September 2008, Republicans 63.8 at the top. That is taking the difference between those who said they were conservative, minusing out those who said they were a liberal. Ideologically, they fall on the scale at 63.8. Democrats were at 3.5. If I actually went back 10 more years, the Democratic Party was 35 points right of center. Republican Party was about 65 points right of center. And in the 80s and the 90s, Republicans won by forming coalitions with conservative Democrats. Now, move forward, in unaffiliated, unaffiliated here being the gray line, unaffiliated were 37.7 10 years ago. Move forward to this survey, May 2018, Republicans 74.1. What you see in the transition between 2010, starting when Republicans took over the legislature, to today, you've seen the Republicans move about 10 points right of center, the Republican Party. The Democratic Party, and what I've told national media folks for years, the impact that Barack Obama had on North Carolina in the 2008 presidential election was he nationalized the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party is no longer the party of Jim Hunt. It is the party of Barack Obama. They have now negative 19.5 points left to center. So they have moved basically 16 points left in that same 10-year period of time. If you look at the difference between 74 and 19, okay, you're looking at 95 points. You hear about the polarization of American politics. Guess what? They're polarized. They're 94 points apart ideologically. So then look at the unaffiliated. Unaffiliated in this survey, self-described, 17.6. They have made a drift to the left and continue to do that. I've actually had, in this fluid 2006 survey, I actually had one when unaffiliated were 12 points left to center. It wasn't a good year. They had drifted left. They moved back. So you know about unaffiliated, a couple of things. First of all, they represent the ideological center of North Carolina. Neither of the two major parties represent the state as a whole ideologically. Unaffiliated are more reflective of that. Secondly is you need to know their loyalty to a party is as deep as their loyalty to a candidate. They do not have one. They will flip back and forth. There are some who lean to the right, there are some who lean to the left, but there's a big pathway in the middle that's completely up for grabs for both sides. And you're going to see that reflective in this data. This gives you a little bit of an ideological break when you look at them. Republicans being the next bar down. You see how red that bar is. Then you look at Democrats, you'll see the blue. And then when you look at the unaffiliated, you'll see the gray, and then a little bit of the red and a little bit more of the blue. Also, when I look at this is look at the entire life versus less than 10 years, and you'll see the change. This is being driven by people moving to North Carolina. Most conservative voter in North Carolina is one who's born and raised here. Least likely to be a conservative voter is one who's moved here in the last 10 years and also living in an urban area. Now getting into the issue set. And we include the questions here so everybody can see how we ask the questions and everything else. But which of the best describes your attitude about the economy in your region of the state? You think the economy has gotten better, will continue to grow? The economy is stagnant, it's not growing at all. I'm worried about local economy is going to get worse than it is now. 57.3 overall says better, continue to grow. Scott, Michael, we were talking about earlier, people feel good about the economy. We're talking about that. It's reflected very much here. The one thing, if you look at the partisan break here with Republicans, Democrats, and unaffiliated, Republicans 77.2, Democrats 38.9, unaffiliated 64.1, a little more optimistic. Unaffiliated, by the way, are more of an economic type voter than they are any other issue set whatsoever. A little bit of a break in the geographic side of it, but rural areas at 52.9, suburban 64, urban 57. Getting to the clean energy set and other energy set overall, they more or less likely to support a lawmaker or candidate who supports policies that encourage the development of more fossil fuel energy such as oil and gas. 2017, when we asked that, it was 49.3. 2018, it's 52.3 more likely to support. Republicans, the strongest set at 76.1. You look at Democrats at 35, you see unaffiliated is 51. I look at 25-point gap between unaffiliated Republicans there, and I look at the Democrats and I see a 16-point gap, so slightly a little bit closer. Again, we talked about length of residence. Born and raised in North Carolina your entire life, 60.1, 20 years plus, 50, 11 to 20, 41, then 34. You see the trend line right there, what's driving the change in the state. Lawmaker candidate supports policies such as renewable energies, such as wind, solar, waste, and energy development. Waste to energy development. You got 2015, 86.8, 2018, 85.2. Basically, all three numbers over the last all four numbers over the 4 years, all within the margin of error. Very stable from that standpoint. You look at Republicans, Democrats, unaffiliated as a whole. Republicans at 79.2. Anytime you're at 80% in an issue, I tell everybody it's basically universal. There's not a lot of difference. Democrats at 89.5 and then unaffiliated 87. Again, you see what unaffiliated is closer to Democrats. They line on the issue set.
I think that it's important that we really focus on this slide. And I think the crosstab we need to look at here is among Republicans. I mean, Paul just said it, but I'm just going to jump in. You know, from some of the information that gets distributed in Raleigh and around the state, you would believe that Republicans don't support renewables, right? You'd believe that Republicans don't support innovation, and the Republicans only want to burn fossil fuel. And they may want to burn fossil fuel. But guess what? I looked at that number on fossil fuel, and it wasn't as high as that number. What's that? I think it was 76, right? On the fossil fuel? 76. Let's flip to the next one. 79. So the next time someone tells you, or the next time you read on the front page of one of these little things that show up in our mailbox, that Republicans are only for fossil fuel. Well, they are, but they're more for renewables.
One thing, notice the length of residency here. Even people born and raised in North Carolina, 82.4. What I look at in the business right now, it doesn't matter if you're working for a Republican or if you're working for a Democrat. If you're going to get 50% plus one, you got to build a winning coalition. Okay, and this kind of issue set gives you that opportunity to build winning coalitions politically. And in fact, just to jump ahead, we actually ran independent expenditures in the May primaries, in Republican primaries, using renewable clean energy sets for candidates who won to promote them.
Before you flip, to dovetail on what he just said, let's draw the other crosstab comparison. Unaffiliated voters, right? Republicans or Democrats have to form coalitions with unaffiliated voters. Now, the previous slide, I think, said that it was 51-45. 51%, just half of unaffiliated voters wanted to do things in public policy that would encourage the development of more fossil fuels. Unaffiliateds on this one, 87%, effectively everybody. So the party that gets in and does the hard work and digs in on renewables, just from looking at the data, is the party that's going to be credited with having a more effective energy policy. Again, 51% of unaffiliateds support candidates more who want to promote more fossil fuels. 45% say less likely. On this one, it's 87% to 8% among unaffiliateds. So, in this case, this is just what we call smart politics based on the numbers.
Candidate lawmakers supports legislation to provide additional ways for home or businesses owners to finance energy efficiency upgrades such as improved insulation, lighting, and windows. Something I should have said earlier. So you know, in all this, in the comparison, every question was asked identically the same each time. There's no changes in any of the script.
And when you say that, you mean all the questions that are repetitive.
That's right.
In each year's poll,
year.
were asked exactly the same each time, so we can have numbers that are comparative from a real standpoint.
You can see 2015, 87.6, very little movement outside the margin, 83.7 here. Ideologically, liberals, moderates, I mean, even conservatives are 81.2. You can look at, and that follows the track a little bit with the partisan break of Republicans at 80.2, Democrats 93, and unaffiliated 85. A little bit of a difference when you look at the strongly support, but one thing I'd like to point out here is over half Republicans, 52.8, say they strongly support.
Yeah, and I think you can also look and see that less than 10% on any category strongly oppose. So again, to Paul's point, 52% of conservatives and 53% of Republicans strongly support this. Less than 10% oppose. So again, that's among Republicans. Among the groups as a whole, it's, the support number is huge. The support number is 95, 94, 81. Look at those numbers up and down the board. The number of opposes is almost, it's negligible. It's not even worth mentioning among any groups. So again, we've got great lawmakers. They're doing great things. And, public opinion is driving public policy.
The Canada lawmaker supports increasing access to natural gas resources by placing a priority on pipeline development and new pipeline construction. 55.8, 55.8, 34.5, 34.5, 9.7. My son, who does all my data work, when he handed me that, I said, well, that's a mistake. He missed, so I went back and looked. No. Look at I put the chart here at the bottom. 2000 equals 600, 2017. It equals 600, 2018. Same identical numbers, which if you do a lot of surveys, I can tell you very seldom they ever have that happen. The difference being the much more support versus the somewhat support changed a little bit, but the totals added up to the same. So if you think it's a mistake, it's not a mistake. If you look at this, more likely to support, you'll see with the conservatives at 80, 43.3 moderates. Republicans at 78, again, this sort of tracks more along the lines of what we saw with the fossil fuel slide.
I would say this, as I look at this slide, and as a political consultant, someone who's run a couple hundred races, Paul has run 500 races, Michael who's run hundreds of races, Scott Laster, others. This, if in a general election, this would not be an issue you would necessarily use, okay? In other words, if you're a consultant, and your candidate supports natural gas, it's okay. 56 to 35 is okay, but there would be other issues you would emphasize. This is not a slam dunk like, are you more or less likely to support renewables? Are you more or less likely to support a candidate who supports policies that promote renewables? This is okay. This is not bad. It's not great.
One other point, if you look at the unaffiliated Democrats, 42, 51, and then Republicans, 78. You've heard me talk about referencing unaffiliated closer to Democrats. One thing I did not mention at the beginning of this, but now I've talked about it a few times, I will mention it now. In our previous surveys, unaffiliated tracked closer to Republicans. And I'll get into changing the overall political environment a little bit, but in the past 3 surveys, they had consistently tracked closer to Republicans on the issue set than they had Democrats. Which of the following do you think is the number one cause for electricity rates to increase in North Carolina? Companies higher profits, lack of competition, supply and demand, pay for renewable mandates, overall cost of generation, and then those who refused or did not know. 40.3, companies higher profits. It was 33.3. You actually see some movement there. We have always focused on this question about the renewable mandates because there's been those who have taken issue with the conservative clean energy's issue sets using renewable mandates. 14.3, 14.6 with conservatives, which is number 4 in their list, number 3 in their list, and then with Republicans, 13.2, which is number 4 in their list, are the reasons for higher electrical. Consistently, lack of competition and higher profits by the companies is a driving factor of what voters see as causing higher energy electricity rates.
I would look at this question and just say that voters are smart. I mean, if you just look at your bill every month, whether it's at a business or whether it's at a residence or whether it's at a public entity, it just makes sense that the vast majority of the excess cost is because there is no competition. I think I would feel free to say that from an education standpoint, because I think any economic study would show the same thing that the public believes, which is that the renewable mandate adds a negligible cost in the short run, detracts from the cost, and actually saves in the long run, and that the public totally sees that. Even among Republicans, 13%, so 1 in 10 basically, believe that the renewable mandate is the cause of increased electric rates, power bills. The public is smart. The public understands. And again, that means there's an issue environment that's ripe for lawmakers to do things that follow along the trend line of the poll.
As you may know, state leaders are discussing several changes to our state's current energy policies. Which of the following you think is most important to you and should be a priority for lawmakers to consider? New clean energy alternatives, more competition, more oil and gas explorations, continued use of coal, look for low-cost sources, and then don't know refuse. Overall, 2018, 49.7 new clean energy. This list was red, and it was rotated at the same time for the respondents. It was not read in the same order each time. It was 47.5 in 2015. It was 53. Again, you see the generation, you see the movement with those residents moving into North Carolina, 47.2. Invest in clean energy goes to 57 for those who've been here 6 to 10 years. More competition drives it second as that. This is clear choice. What I find interesting in this slide is basically using the economic, when we say look for low-cost sources for solutions. We don't define what those are. It's just basically look for ways to save money. That contrast between you want to save money or you look at new clean energy alternatives, 6.3 6.7 to 49.7 on the contrast.
I think an interesting thing to point out is that so many voters are completely unsatisfied with the way that the energy market is now. And we see this in slide after slide after slide. This polling presentation will show you that 70% of North Carolina voters are not satisfied with the monopoly-controlled electricity market, and they want greater choice, which we saw in the previous slide. They want more options, and they want access to renewables. Look at the Republican line. What's the number one thing that the voters believe is important to them and ought to be the priority as it relates to energy policy? It's a tie. It's a tie between invest in clean energy and create more competition. Amazing. Between those two, it's 60%. So 6 in 10 Republicans want more competition because they believe there really is none, or they want to invest more in clean energy. And that's among Republicans. If you look at the all-important unaffiliated voters, between those two, over half want to invest in clean energy, but between invest in clean energy and more competition, you have 3/4 of the electorate that are registered unaffiliated in this state. That's what they want.
Over the past few years, this is a new question. We've not asked this in the past. And this was the gauge on the solar energy facilities across. Would you say these facilities have had a positive or negative impact on the state? Overall, 59.8 said it had a positive impact, 18.2. You can see the geographic break, RDU, which is the triangle market at 61.5. Charlotte, 51, and then Greensboro, 60. And Greensboro is the most conservative media market of the three major media markets, and the most conservative media market in the state of North Carolina. And then Wilmington, 87. Northeastern North Carolina, 52. If you look at the conservative Republicans, did the break there with the 46, 23 on the conservatives. Democrats, and you see a little bit of the partisan breaks with the unaffiliated. Unaffiliated and Democrats is a point that I stress here many, many times. They see it as a positive impact. You see where they align more closely with Democrats on this issue now than they are with the Republicans.
I'll put my political consultant hat back on. That's a 3-to-1 issue. If I was looking for an issue in a general election, I like when 60% of one side favors something and only 18.2% opposes. This is a landslide issue. People, no matter what has been said, no matter what is said at the building, no matter what is in print, no matter what's on the internet, the voters of North Carolina by a 3-to-1 margin believe that these large-scale solar facilities are good and have had a net positive impact in their local area and in North Carolina.
This is on the wind moratorium. In last year's session, state legislature lawmakers enacted an 18-month moratorium, putting a ban on all new wind projects. We talked about the moratorium Block 2 projects that were already approved in the development, hauling hundreds of millions of dollars in new construction. Will you be more or less likely to vote for a lawmaker supported moratorium on new wind energy development? 28.3 said they were more likely, 54 said less likely. This is actually an issue in the Bob Steinberg race, the independent expenditure that we were working on for a group. We actually used this issue, Steinberger being somebody who was opposed to the moratorium in a Republican primary. 9% no difference, refused. If you look at you can see a little bit of a break on the media market. Again, you see the geographic break, the length of residency break of people moving in here. 48.9 for entire life, 58.3, 61.3. One of the things I stress on this on the energy sets and when we do this, consistency of data is more important than the overall numbers. Consistency of trends is more important than the overall actual numbers. Survey research is not a predictor of the future. It's sort of a reflection of the present as far as attitudes. But when you look at it over time series, that's the real value of the investment. And when you have consistency, the trend on length of residency is a consistent trend we have seen in every survey. It's a consistent trend I see in almost every single survey on various issue sets.
I've got a couple points on this. First of all, when you get this slide presentation and you have a chance to review it with more detail and more time, this is a great slide because we have so many crosstabs. There's so much interesting stuff here. But I'm going to draw a couple of more red lines here. We're going to have some pretend red lines I'm going to show. Look at unaffiliateds, okay? Let's see. Yeah. More than 2-to-1 think that the wind moratorium was bad. Now, we have more ideological crosstabs on this slide than on others. Look at very conservative, okay? 43.5 think it was a bad idea. 32.5 think that was a good idea. No wonder Bob Steinberg won his primary, right? And he didn't just win his primary, he blew the other guy out. It wasn't even close because he ran on renewables. There were several candidates I would like to point out statewide that ran in favor of renewables as a leading issue in their Republican primaries. Chris Malone is one. Chris was under assault from a number of the folks in Wake County and the various constituency groups that comprise the Republican Party, despite his good record. But Chris really led with the fact that he was a clean energy champion and that he had won that award and that he had consistently supported clean energy. This is a winning issue. I mean, you can look and you can say, well, among the very conservative, which is the furthest to the right, among all these crosstabs, the support for this is the least. The support for renewables is the least among all these crosstabs, but it doesn't matter. A hefty majority or a hefty plurality among those who describe themselves not as somewhat conservative, not as conservative, but as very conservative, do not want a wind moratorium, do not want all these millions of dollars that went into these projects to be halted, do not want all these jobs that are being created to be stopped. And so I would just look and say, follow the data, and you're going to come to the same conclusion, that running on these issues, if you're a candidate, is a winning strategy because the people support your position on these issues in favor of renewables.
This gets back into the options, the monopoly question, which we've asked in the last 4 years. When it comes to where you purchase your electricity to run your home, do you think North Carolina consumers have options, or do you feel the public utilities have a monopoly? And clearly we already know they have a monopoly, but we're asking the question. 2015, 86.4. 89.2, which you see here at 89.2. The biggest difference here, which I highlight, which anytime you're over 80 is almost universal. We're close to 90 here. The rural areas have shifted in this. Rural areas in the last 3 surveys were basically about 80% monopoly and about 15 to 16% that they felt like they had options, and that was a very consistent trend. In this one, you see it's 90 to 7. It tracks right with the suburban and the urban areas, and that reflects in the change of the 89 on this number. You think state local officials should work to provide consumers electricity more options they can purchase power, basically third-party sales. More options, 77.2 in 2018, been 69, it's consistently gotten stronger. I put the breakout of the crosstabs here from 2017 to 2018 so you can look at the movement. If you look at the urban area, 71, 76, suburban 67, 79, rural 63 to 77. Again, that reflects what we just saw in the rural. The length of residence in 2017, 63% entire life, now 73. That's a 10-point shift. 66.2 for the 20 to 80. Age under 40, 75. We look at generational differences there, 74.5 to 65 over. Now 90.5 under 40 to 75. When you looking at we talk about competition, we talk about choice, we talk about all that. Right here is a good view to, if you want to be competitive in the future, where you need to start thinking about as it relates to energy policy. Follow-up discussion has been made about third-party sales in North Carolina. Third-party sales should allow other companies to compete with public utilities in your area, provide consumers more choices for services and pricing. We asked the process, and we had to inform them about third-party sales. Do you think lawmakers should pass legislation that will allow for third-party energy sales to consumers? 78.8, 15, 83.7 in this survey in 2018. Would you be more inclined to support or oppose a legislator who supported third-party energy sales? 72 to 79, pretty much universal across the board. This is our Amazon question. It's a new question we have not asked in the past. Much has been written about Amazon looking to locate. If North Carolina companies selected, we talk about the project, create thousands of jobs, pay above national average. Amazon prefers state policies, allow them flexibility to contract directly with power generation facilities using clean energy alternatives such as wind and solar. Duke Energy opposes such policies because they make more of their money selling power, and changing state law would inject competition into the marketplace and threaten the Duke Energy monopoly. Which of the following would you say you support most? 77.8, modify state law. 10.2 said do nothing. 10% did not know, which means they would like to have more information. You can look at the break with Republicans. 75.6 Republicans overall modify state law. Unaffiliated, 75.6, 12.2. Here's another example, not a mistake when you look at Republicans unaffiliated. Their numbers are identical in the crosstabs. And then you got the Democrats at 85.
Yeah, and it's important to note, I think just in the news we've all read that Apple and Amazon both have a goal to power 100% of their operations with renewables in the future. And so clean energy clearly is the major economic driver that we have to have in order to attract these kind of projects, these kind of jobs, and these kind of educated, high-skilled labor to North Carolina.
One thing I'll add to that is that if North Carolina was fortunate enough to land those 2 projects, and I've been talking about length of residency here, 5 years from now, you're going to see completely different numbers on length of residency, by the way. I mean, you're going to see an explosion, which is going to provide for a dramatic shift in these numbers. Just last year, Duke Energy, this is the Power Forward 10-year plan, estimated cost $13.8 billion. We basically gave them the background. Which of the following do you think best represents your opinion about Duke's grid plan? Keep our power on and maintaining the reliable sources most important to ratepayers. Should support Duke Energy's efforts. Duke Energy's public utility, and before taxpayers are forced to pay, states should hire independent energy experts and present the best plan options for grid modernization. And then third, being competition, should focus on maintaining the current grid at cheapest cost and allow private companies who can produce cheaper electricity to enter the marketplace. Competition. 49.7 allow competition, 31.3 hire independent experts, only 10.3 supports Duke's efforts. Conservatives allow competition, 52.7, 53 stronger than unaffiliated and Democrats in this particular question. Coal ash, we have done some questions on coal ash in the past, and we continue to change that a little bit, and we've had some, it's been an issue that has changed over the period of time. So we asked about the coal ash, and we asked the State Utility Commission, talked about the cost of the cleanup, and you read up above. Rate increase, $200 million to pay for the initial cleanup cost through 2017. State Utilities Commissions did the right thing by passing coal ash cleanup on the taxpayers. Our State Utilities Commission was wrong, and state lawmakers should intervene to make Duke Energy pay for the cleanup out of their profits. 84.8 said that the Utilities Commission was wrong. Only 8% said they did the right thing. If you look at the partisan break on this, Republicans 80.7, Democrats 91, unaffiliated 78.6. If you want to look at a little bit of the break of the rural, suburban, urban 83, 83, then 91. We asked to follow up to N equals 48 to the 48 people who said that the Utilities Commissions had done the right thing. Would you still agree with ratepayers with the cost of coal ash cleanup if you knew Duke Energy earned more than $3 billion in profit in 2017? That changed the numbers to 87.2 with only 4.8 saying now the right thing. And then we add in with what's been in the news about North Carolina's highest paid CEO earning $21 million, 175 times more than the average compensation of a Duke Energy employee, taken right out of, I think, Charlotte Business Journal. That then, with the 48, half still said they did the right thing, a third said it was wrong, changed the numbers to 87.3.
And I would just say this, again, the public's smart. Voters are smart. You know, we're asking them this question relative to the coal ash and the ratepayers being soaked for that fee, and then the CEO's salary. I mean, what is she really paid to do, right? She's paid to maintain a monopolistic structure. She's paid to make sure that there is no consumer choice. She's paid to make sure that there is no competition, that there is no considerable competition for lower cost and for innovation. And I think the public gets that, and that's why the public doesn't believe that it ought to have to pay for the coal ash cleanup. That maybe a little bit of it ought to come out of the $21.5 million salary, $21.5 million salary of the utility CEO. The public's smart.
Given environmental impact of coal ash and other waste byproducts, fossil fuels, which of the following best describes your opinion on how state lawmakers should approach formulating the energy policy for the state? Should look at investing more state resources than we read in the list, rotated it, just like I stated earlier. Investing more state resources into renewable energy sources such as solar, wind, and other renewable energy sources. Lawmakers should look at using state resources to assist companies like Duke in offsetting the cost of cleaning up the environment. The lawmakers should do nothing and let the State Utilities Commission continue to regulate Duke Energy. 60.3, invest in more renewables. Assist Duke's 12.7, do nothing 17.3. Again, highlight the changes on the length of residency here. If you look at conservatives, 47.3, Republicans at 46, invest in renewables. Their number two answer was do nothing. Okay, and for those of us who poll a lot on Republicans and do a lot in Republican primary, there is a slice. Jim Burton's over here smiling. There's a slice of Republicans and very conservative Republicans who believe that government should do nothing. In fact, they believe we should not even have government. Okay, but you can see the break here. Invest more in renewables versus assist with the cleanup or do nothing.
And I would also say this, that same slice of people who believe that we should do nothing are also the same people who would be completely opposed to a monopolistic utility system. So that's a little bit misleading in a vacuum. You need to look at it from that standpoint. The folks who believe we should do nothing in this respect are also the people who would be the most in favor of government being more out of, if not completely out of, regulation of utilities.
Good point, Dave. Given what you know about coal ash, I have no idea why that is now white at the top in the text. Costs associated with cleanup. North Carolina, would you agree or disagree? North Carolina lawmakers were wrong to enact the 18-month moratorium that banned all new wind energy development in North Carolina. Again, we asked this question, same group of people, we'd asked it previously, but we asked it a different way, and we put it in the context of the coal ash. 55.8 sort of mirrors what we had before, the 55.8. Our bar's missing, that's some graphic problem at 33.8. It is in the printed version of this, so it cannot explain that. You look at Republicans at 49.2 agree, 58.8, and then 59. So half Republicans agree that the wind moratorium was wrong.
And many more Republicans agree that the wind moratorium was wrong than believe that the wind moratorium was right.
More than ever, state lawmakers should be reducing regulations, allow more private solar development, renewable energy sources such as solar, wind, and waste-to-energy technology. First time we've asked this question, 83% agree, 9.7 disagree. Republicans, 85.3 to 6.1. What I found interesting here was the Democrat number at 79.4 to 14, disagree. And I believe that the factor of that is a word, private sector development. That's what impacted on that. So if you put it in the context of private sector development. Unaffiliated at 87 to 6, they actually track closer to Republicans on this issue than they do Democrats. And that gets back to talking about them being economic conservative. Unaffiliated tend to be the best educated, higher income, more likely to be in private sector than public sector employment. This question, that's the end of the energy set. This is a political question. Actually, two political questions. And this came out of a conversation Dee and I had during the Republican primaries. He asked, I think it was in Congressman McHenry's survey, he asked, the day of the era of modern day presidents, going back to Jimmy Carter, which president do you admire most? And I said, well, okay, I'm going to take that, steal it from him, but I want to enhance it by asking it a second time. Because that's when you start to really look at what people's preferences are and try to gain insight. We ask all the time, do you approve, disapprove, the president's job performance, the governor's job performance, do you have a favorable impression or an unfavorable impression? What I want to try to do is take this sort of away and then look at admiration and how you feel about and respect. On the top line is first choice. So when asked, 33.7% of the N equals 600 said Barack Obama to 33.3. Now what I will tell you for any Democrats, and this is pure mathematical. Okay, first of all, understand there's more Democrats than there are Republicans. If you look at but importantly, if you look at the lines, look at Democrats, 58.4, Ronald Reagan 58.9. So Barack Obama is the Ronald Reagan of the Democratic Party. Okay, unaffiliated are split a little bit more to Reagan. Okay, so then you go back and say, now from the same list, who would you say is your second most admired? And you'll see on N equals 600, Bill Clinton becomes 18.3, which I found interesting. Bill Clinton was 5.8 on the first choice. So I tell everybody, now we know why Hillary Clinton's not president, or didn't carry North Carolina. You see Bill Clinton, Jimmy Carter, then Trump, then Reagan, Obama, and you see H.W. and then the W. Bush. Combine those two together and you get the bottom chart. So in North Carolina, most admired presidents, first, second choice, the ones they mentioned most, Barack Obama, Ronald Reagan, 43.3, 43.2. Basically, and we talk about, if you think this state's red, or if you think the state's blue, it's pure purple. This is a purple state. North Carolina is a swing state and will only become more and more of a competitive state. It will be, the politics of North Carolina will be more like the politics of New Hampshire and Maine in the next 10 years. That's where we're headed if we continue on the same growth trends that we're at. Donald Trump, I circled that number, 58.4. Not a slam on Trump, but the fact is that 41.6 Republicans did not make it his first choice or second choice. And we talk about voter intensity issues and how we address that. If you look at the length of residency trends, North Carolina, the entire life, Obama's 37.8, 50.2 for Reagan. You see it flip. It's almost a reverse off of that. So, give you a little bit of political insight. We have not had any questions as we have gone along. Be glad to entertain any questions or take any questions at this point in time. That's just the breakdown, demographics of everything.
Paul, thank you so much for an awesome presentation. I'd like to just say a few closing remarks before I turn it back over to Mark Fleming for Mark's remarks. The first thing I would say is to thank the staff of Strategic Partners. David Shumaker is here. David, thank you for putting this on, for all the good work. Kensley Leonard, Ginevra Joyce Myers, Mary Frances Meyer, our interns. We are so thrilled and thankful for all of the work that you did to put together such a good event. At this time, Paul will be available to answer any additional questions that any of you may have. I'm going to let Mark come up and sort of introduce Paul for that. Paul will be available to get into the data with you. I'd like to thank all of you for being here, and we will see you back here for the 5th annual event. And in the meantime, make sure that all the lawmakers and staff that could not make it over here today because of the truncated schedule are, again, provided with all these valuable resources to make informed policy decisions for the state. So thanks very much. Mark?
Thanks again to Dee and Paul for taking time to do this today. They'll be available to answer questions afterwards. But again, thank you all for coming. If you know anyone that wants to join us in Charlotte on Friday, we have a few more spaces available, so please let us know. We appreciate it, and thanks again for taking time to be here today. Thank you.